Alright, hear me out. This fight is not a bad idea. Okay? It's not. Now just hear me out. Alright? Obviously, Usyk beat AJ. Fury has a belt. You would think, okay, Usyk goes and he fights Tyson Fury. Right? That's the only fight people want to see, is the undisputed fight. Right? And I understand that to an extent. But listen, I told you guys that in my last video, I don't think Usyk beats Fury, right? I think Usyk could get away with it. Do I see Usyk knocking out Fury? No. Do I see Fury knocking out Usyk? No. But I do see Fury winning a decision based on styles, right? Fury has that southpaw experience. He, unless Fury, like, cuts a lot of weight or loses a lot of weight, like he did against Otto Wallen, where, that was a fight that Wallen almost stopped Fury in, then yeah, we could see an upset, probably Fury getting stopped. I don't know, maybe, right? Or just losing a lopsided decision. However, if Fury doesn't do that and he shows up the same way like he did against, I don't know, Dylan White, or even Fury in the second or third fight, then I think Fury wins, right? That's because Fury is the better, or he's the bigger guy. He has the longer arm length. He's, I think, I just think he's too big for Usyk. And look, I don't think Fury's gonna try and fight Usyk like he did Wilder. If he does that and he sort of rushes Wilder, then yeah, I think Usyk would win, possibly. But, at the same time, I think that Fury would just basically box on the back foot like he did against Klitschko. And I see it being almost exactly like the Klitschko fight, maybe a bit more entertaining, but I just see Fury winning a decision. Probably a close one, but still, it's just, I don't see Usyk really dominating Fury in any way, right? I don't think Fury's going to have to worry about the gas tank issue like AJ did, because Fury has a better gas tank than AJ, I would say. And that's just it, is that Fury sort of took advantage of his fights against Anthony Joshua, Chisora, even his cruiserweight fights against even against his cruiserweight fights against Gassiev, Tony Bellew, Michael Hunter, Marius Bradis. The reason for that is because they tired out later in the fight, right? To an extent anyway. But I don't think Fury's going to have that same problem, because Fury is better at managing his gas tank than those guys. And I just don't see Fury getting dominated. So, I get why people want to see that fight. Look, I would like to see it eventually as well, because it's it's two guys who, aren't the hardest punchers, but they're both undefeated, right? They're both quick punchers. They're both very technical, especially Usyk. And it would make for a good fight, potentially, right? But at the same time, I could also see it being very similar to the Klitschko and Fury fight. And we all know how that fight went. That was probably the most boring title match I've ever seen, right? Just two guys holding each other, right? And Fury just, sort of like straddling along the ring and basically throwing like all these flicker punches and, you know what I mean? All that stuff, right? So it could potentially be a good fight, but it could also potentially be a snooze fest. However, Fury has, officially offered Anthony Joshua to fight, right? And I think Frank Warren, or I don't know, they claimed this, that they sent AJ an offer of like a 60-40 split fight. I don't know if that's real or not, because, I don't really trust Frank Warren, to be honest. But, what I will say is that I don't think that's a bad idea. AJ versus Fury, right? Regardless of all the politics, the money, all that stuff. AJ versus Fury, or Fury versus AJ in December, I guess it would be billed as, is not a bad idea, right? And I'll tell you why. So, like I said before, people will obviously go on about, AJ's like, he has 3 losses, he got knocked out by fat Andy Ruiz or whatever, and then he got dominated by Usyk twice. I say that in quotations, because, in my opinion, it was a lot closer than what people are sort of making it out to be, but, that's why people are sort of saying those things though, and that's why they would have AJ as like a very, very big underdog in this fight against Tyson Fury if they were to fight, right? But what I will say is that, and I know this word is, used a lot or possibly or maybe even overused at times, but, I will say that styles make fights, and I will say this. We've seen this example used with the whole George Foreman, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier situation. It's like a rock, paper, scissors situation where you have Joe Frazier, whose style works better against Muhammad Ali because he's a pressure fighter. He starts like rushing you with all these, boxing combinations, punch combinations. And Ali's a defensive fighter, so he's like constantly having to defend against all these punches. And, it didn't work all the time. He even got knocked down in one of those 3 fights. And, despite Ali winning the second and third fight, those were still tough fights, especially the third fight, where Ali, felt like he was gonna, that was a fight that Ali even said himself that he felt like he was gonna die in that fight. You know what I mean? So you had Joe Frazier giving Ali very tough fights and even winning one of those fights. Then you had Foreman on the other hand, Foreman and Frazier. Foreman's style sort of countered Frazier's style because Foreman's sort of, a guy who lures guys into his range, fighters into his range, and Frazier's a guy who tries to come at you and all that stuff, right? And, one uppercut, one left hook, one right hand, whatever it was. And Frazier went down multiple times in the fight, and he got stopped within 2 rounds. He didn't get knocked out cold or anything, but he got stopped regardless. It was like the AJ versus Reese stoppage to an extent anyway, right? And, that was Foreman won that fight. So you would think that Foreman knocks out Ali, but just because A beat B and B beat, or just because fighter A beats fighter B, that doesn't necessarily mean that fighter A beats fighter C. Because Ali, when he fought Foreman, he was sort of, that worked in Ali's favor, was being a defensive fighter, because it was Foreman coming at Ali with all these big punches, and he was swinging and throwing and landing all these big punches on Ali, but Ali was defending a lot of them, or most of them anyway. And, Foreman, later he tired out in the fight. Ali took advantage of that. He started to land all these punches on the chin, despite not being the hardest puncher at the time. And he knocked Foreman out within, 8 rounds. You know what I mean? But because of Frazier's style of, being a better pressure and come forward type of fighter, then Foreman, he was able to give Ali tougher fights as opposed to Foreman a tough fight, twice actually, because Frazier and Foreman fought twice. So my point is that, look, I think styles make fights, and honestly I think AJ, I don't know if he has a better chance of beating Tyson Fury than Usyk, but I think he has a better chance of knocking out Tyson Fury than Usyk does. And I'll say, that's mainly because of the power, but I will also say this, is that, AJ he's a fighter who is good at shortening his punches on the inside of his opponent's range. He did that against guys like Reese, Klitschko, Povetkin, Dylan White, even Parker to an extent, and all that stuff, right? And, Fury, he's got a long reach, and if AJ's able to get, on the inside of Fury's long reach and long range and all that stuff, and land those, quick, short-range punches, then he could possibly give Fury a lot of problems, because I think AJ, when it comes to those, very quick in-the-pocket punches, I think AJ's the quicker puncher than the two. I mean, yeah, when it comes to, long-range punches, the jab and the, right hand and all that stuff, I mean, Fury's quicker in that aspect, right? But I'm just saying, if AJ could cause Fury problems potentially, if it was sort of an instance where AJ got on the inside and was able to land a big uppercut left hook, like he did against Andy Ruiz, and he could potentially drop Fury with that kind of combination, if he landed flush on the chin. And another thing are the body shots. Is when you saw AJ fight Usyk, even though he lost that fight by decision, he still rocked Usyk or stunned Usyk multiple times with a lot of body shots. You know, he really hurt Usyk to the body. You know, and he also did it in the first fight to an extent, right? Like, he rocked Usyk in the 9th round with a body shot. So, you know, that's what AJ could do to Tyson Fury, right? So he possesses that kind of threat to Tyson Fury, right? You know, and look, I'm not saying that Fury, like, AJ beats Fury, but I do think it would be interesting in terms of their styles, because you had AJ fighting Alexander Usyk. AJ couldn't really do that against Usyk because Usyk was, you know, shorter. He was a southpaw, and you know, he had like, you know, a shorter arm length. And you can't, with a guy like AJ who's has a longer arm length, he can't really do that against Usyk, because if he tries to get on the inside of Usyk's arm length, you know, then, or his reach, if you will, then Usyk's gonna be the one who's more comfortable in that range, right? So it was a bit more awkward. And I even said this before the fight, is that, you know, AJ could show up like 100%. He could still possibly lose. You know, I don't think AJ did show up 100% on the night. Like, I think, you know, AJ even said himself that he left it all in the training camp as opposed to the fight itself. You know, but I mean, that was still a good performance by AJ, regardless. And he, you know, it went the distance, and Usyk won the decision, right? So, what I'm saying is that styles make fights, and people will say, oh, but Fury's a southpaw as well, and the southpaw stance gave AJ problems. Who, you know, AJ even admitted that. So how about that? You know, what I will say is that, you know, that you got a point there, but I will also say that Fury, the times he has gone southpaw in the past, he's not been the most comfortable doing that, right? So he did that against Wilder at one point in their first fight, and you know, it got to the point where Wilder landed this big right hand, and as soon as Fury got caught with a big right hand, you know, Fury sort of resorted back to being in an orthodox stance, right? He also did that against White for like a very short moment, you know, but he was uncomfortable staying southpaw throughout the entire fight. He did that against Klitschko to an extent. He did it against Otto Wallen, right, for a very short time. So, you know, Fury is a switch hitter, but he's not the best switch hitter, right? He's not like, oh, I can go southpaw this whole fight. You know, he's never, like, what's a fight he's ever done that in? Maybe early in his career, I don't know. But he hasn't done that at a high level. He's always been orthodox mostly, right? I mean, if anything, I mean, you know, you see guys in the lighter weight classes, like Terence Crawford, I think is probably the best switch hitter at the moment. You know what I mean? And, you know, I don't think, you know, Fury's not as good as Crawford in terms of that style, right? So, look, you know, Fury could fight southpaw against AJ at times, but I don't think he's going to do it a lot because he's not as skilled of a southpaw as Alexander Usyk. And you see AJ in the past, he's been more comfortable against orthodox fighters, and the only time he's had a loss against an orthodox fighter was when he fought Andy Ruiz Jr. But that was a fight, you know, in that fight, Andy Ruiz Jr., you know, it was stylistically different because Andy Ruiz Jr. is a faster puncher on the inside than Tyson Fury. And he's also, in my opinion, a harder puncher than Tyson Fury, right? And, you know, that was a fight that AJ just got caught in. You know, he just, right, he tried to force the knockout in that fight, and, you know, he just got caught. It happens, right? I don't think Fury would catch AJ the same way Ruiz did. Just my opinion, right? You know, especially considering the power difference between Ruiz and, or the punching power difference between Ruiz and Fury, right? So, yeah, look, if this fight happens, I'm down for it. That's all I'm saying, right? Do I think it's going to happen? No, but I'm just saying, or do I think it's going to happen? I mean, it could possibly happen, right? I don't know if it will or won't, right? But what I will say is that I do think, you know, if it does happen, I won't be upset, you know? I mean, I know I'm an AJ fan, I do want to see AJ get redemption and all that stuff, but even as a neutral, I'm still like, yeah, I think I'd rather see this fight than, you know, AJ versus Wilder, to be honest, right, at this point. Because Wilder's coming off 2 losses against Tyson Fury. Wilder's not even going to fight AJ, you know, he's fighting Robert Helenius, and then he's going to probably fight Ruiz after that, right? So you're going to see Wilder work his way back up, right? Something he's never really done, in my opinion, is worked his way up to a title shot, because he's, like, before and after, before and after he fought Stiverne, he was just fighting these guys aren't bad fighters, right? But they're, in no way should they have been fighting for the WBC title, right? The WBC championship of the world. Like Johann Duhaupas, Artur Szpilka, Luis Ortiz, Bermane Stiverne, right? I mean, you see these guys and you're like, how do these guys get title shots? I mean, White made sense. Parker made sense. Because Parker had a belt at the time. Klitschko made sense, right? Povetkin made sense because he was a former champion, right? Multiple guys made sense when those guys fought AJ, except for maybe Eric Molina and Dominic Brazil, right? But even then, it's like, the guys that AJ fought, like Dominic Brazil, I mean, he was undefeated, and so was Charles Martin. Eric Molina, I can sort of understand. That wasn't like, I don't know, not a cherry pick, but probably, I don't know. It wasn't. But even in that fight, you could see that AJ stopped Eric Molina quicker than what Deontay Wilder did. Deontay Wilder got rocked against Molina, right? And I know styles make fights and stuff, like I said before, but still. All I'm saying is that Wilder, like, what has he done to prove himself, to have a shot at, like, Anthony Joshua, right? Just because he had the WBC. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to have to beat... The guys I would like to see Wilder face next are, Dylan White, Andy Ruiz Jr., possibly Joseph Parker. I think actually that would be a pretty decent fight. Even a Pulev or a Chisora, just like someone within like the top 10, like that's at least like a competitive fighter, even if it's in the lower ranking of the top 10, right? It's like, I don't know, because like he really does have to work his way up, because his best fight, the best name on his record is against Tyson Fury, a fight he lost twice to, you know what I mean? So that's sort of how I see it. And so yeah, I'd rather see AJ versus Fury in December as opposed to, AJ waiting for Deontay Wilder to beat Helenius, and then, they say, okay, let's make the deal, and then Wilder's like, oh, but we want them to fight in America. Oh, but I want this amount of money. Oh, but I want, and all that stuff. Even though he got offered a ton of money, in the first fight, or, before Wilder fought Tyson Fury in the first fight. So, yeah. Look, I don't know if this fight's gonna happen, AJ versus Fury in December. A lot of people probably think it's not, which makes sense, but honestly, if it does, look, all I'm saying is that it's not a bad idea, right? And I'm not saying that Fury beats or AJ beats Fury 100%, but I'm just saying it still is an interesting fight. It's still like a big, big fight for boxing. Just even if AJ doesn't have a belt right now, he could redeem himself with this win, right? Especially since he's a massive underdog. He would be a massive underdog going into the fight, and that's the only way he would sort of get respect back from, the boxing world, is to have a win over Fury. And then potentially, if AJ beats Tyson Fury, he would go on to fight Usyk for a trilogy, and then that would be like, the stakes would be higher for both guys. But also you have Tyson Fury beating Anthony Joshua, it would actually make the Usyk fight make more sense, because it would be a situation of, oh, okay, Usyk has 2 wins against Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, could have a win against Anthony Joshua, so then, the stakes are fairly high, right? Because now it's like, okay, who's the best, right? So it's not a bad idea, guys, right? It really isn't, and honestly, I'd be down for it, so that's all I'm saying, and, yeah, that's it. Some people might disagree with me, but I really wouldn't mind seeing this fight. And just remember, styles make fights. Styles make fights. So, yeah. Anyway, you guys let me know what you think. Would you like to see this fight? Would you not? Let me know in the comments below. I get why people want to see Usyk versus Fury more, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm just saying, not a bad idea. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, alright, I've said a lot, but anyway, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys have a good day, night, wherever you are. Take care and peace.